Hi, welcome to another Coatington Coffee. I'm with my friends and colleagues, so I've got Leo and Nicklas from Mirka here. We met, from our point of view, yesterday at Metz, and we touched on the subject of sandpapers, which we talk about with all of our colleagues. So you've got SEA, 3M, Mirka. We did a video with 3M, and the guys came to me and said, Rich, we need to talk about scratch profile, we need to talk about P grades and just give a bit more information. So where we are at the moment is that a P grade doesn't necessarily match a non-P grade in the scratch profile, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what I'm saying here is the guys have kindly brought some visual representation. So Leah, this is a P grade.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where this is a non-P grade,
Exactly.
both with 400 on.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is,
Yeah.
actually, the depth of the cut and the scratch isn't the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the importance to know the difference in P grade and the not P grade. Not P grade, you can work easily. You can reach the same result, but you have to know the difference between P grade and not P grade. Simple example: if you use a 400 P grade, for instance, we have average 5 microns deep scratches.
Okay.
And with a not P grade, probably we have 7 microns. This is an example. This means, especially in metallic color, when the metallic color go in the scratches like that profile, you have the risk to have the cloudy or spider web, what we call, in the final result.
Okay.
That's the difference. It's important the users know the difference.
Yeah.
Because when they order 400, if they order these two 400 products,
It's going to be a different cut.
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, so quickly, because that makes a lot of sense. So what we're saying is, if this is a metallic flake, right?
Yeah.
And this is I have to do this the right way, so I'm not being rude to anyone. This is your scratch profile.
Yeah.
If the scratch profile is not deep enough or too deep, it can hold the metallic flake in a certain angle, and you get clouding and mottling.
Exactly.
So SE, our product, just so you're aware, and which is a base coat and clear, 25 microns is all you're getting with the base coat. So potentially the flake, if the scratch profile is too deep, the flake will sit in the scratch profile rather within the film build of the paint. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So you can cause clouding and mottling through the wrong depth of scratch.
Exactly.
So I think, Nicklas, I think what we need to do is, because you've kindly put some slides together, let's talk about the P grade and the mesh, and then maybe can we then move straight in or move through and eventually finish on scratch profile and what that means?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
So, like we talked about the mesh yesterday, and or the filter. We filter the grains through a filter, and that is deciding the size of the grain. Yeah. So for example, P400 here refers to the size of the grain. Okay. Not the surface roughness.
Yeah. So it's the grain size, not the scratch. The depth of scratch.
Exactly.
Okay.
So here's just a picture of a sedimentation machine or a sieving machine. Sorry, and it's within this.
This is Jurassic machine, but
yeah,
it's old, but well, Leo,
exactly.
We're old, but
Jurassic
too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So within this machine, you can have different sizes of filters, and for example, you can have on the top, you can have 400, 320, 240, and so on.
So it goes through and picks out the grains.
Yes.
Okay.
So and the grains that falls through, for example, a 400 P400 filter is the size of 400.
Okay. Good. So that picture I drew really badly on the previous video, making a lot more sense now. So per inch squared, P400 would have 400 strands one way, 400 strands the other way. The size in the mesh or the filter that it makes denotes the size of aggregate that can go through, and that leaves you with that.
It's
that makes
basically the size of the whole.
Yeah, perfect.
And then
it gets complicated.
This is keep in mind, this is a very simplified explanation.
Yeah, sort of high level, quick.
Yeah, just to get an idea of it. Then if we look on the grain size, this is a table that shows the microns. It shows Hansen mesh, F standard and the P standard of the grain size. So for example, a P400 should have a grain size in about 35 microns.
Is there a plus and minus on that, Nicklas? Like,
There is a plus and minus.
Yeah.
10%.
Okay, yeah, I cannot tell you.
Yeah,
but
not an exact number, but for the guys
not.
to know, it's not 400 mixed with a lot of 1,000 up to 400 because it all went through the mesh.
Yeah.
It is 400 plus or minus, say.
Let's say 10.
Let's
say 10, but it's around 35.
So your P is 35 microns, and then you go to your non.
Yeah, if we take
non-P.
for example an F standard, it's you see it's a big difference in the table here. But if we take a non-P graded product,
Yeah.
that means that it doesn't follow this this table. It doesn't follow this standard.
And P is can you remind everyone of the, because it's a governing body, if you like. It's
the P is a standard that the FEPA organization have. The members of the FEPA organization have agreed that this is the way that we will measure the size of the grains.
So we need to make sure, I think the well-known brands are a member, but if people are using what I call value engineered papers and there's a P grade on there, you need to make sure that they're a member. If they're not, it doesn't necessarily match this grading. Really complicated, I get that.
Yep.
But if it's a member of that governing body and it's a P grade, you get what you get. The cut is going to be the same. So all of us from retail to professional, P grade we're safe with. I think the bit we move on to next is the non-P grade, where you might need to use something like this. So in the world of super yachts and surveyors, you'll see where they use this piece of equipment to measure scratch profile. It's a bit like a stylus on your record player. And if you imagine you've got your scratches here, this moves along and this little arm moves up and down and will measure the depth of the scratch.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So can we touch on that then? So what we're saying is P doesn't necessarily match a non-P grade, and the scratch profile is different. That's what we're. And from my point of view, being selfish as the paint manufacturer, if you've got a deep scratch, and it can telegraph back through the top coat and look really, really bad. So it's really important to me that the sanding is done correctly. We talked about metallics. Depth of scratch is important. So you're going to see this sometimes, and it's being measured, but it's important to know what it means. And I'm going to put a rough figure on it, and you're going to tell me I'm right or wrong. But a scratch profile for a top coat, finish for a top coat to go on, is between 2 and 5 microns. Is what we're saying.
It's normally,
right?
yes, this is average.
Okay.
Less than 6, but we are normally in the 5 to 2. This is the average.
It depends on of course the paint and everything. But
Absolutely.
let's say between 4 and 7, something like that.
So he's changed me already. He's changed it. But these guys are the experts, right?
You need to specify it for every paint application.
Okay. So so what are we showing here?
Good. Here I have a surface roughness measurement on a primer, and we have sanded with grit 400 from different abrasive products from different abrasives manufacturers. And guess which one of it's one of them here is non-P graded. It says 400 on it.
Do you want me? You're going to put me on the. He's put me on the spot. I'm going to say, because this is microns on the graph, right? So I'm saying manufacturer 2 is non-graded because it. Well, it's a peak. It falls outside of all the other 6.
Exactly.
I'm hoping I'm right.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah. I was right.
You're right.
Good.
And we measure 3 different measurements here. We have RA, RZ, and RT. And if we jump into RA, that's the roughness average, and it's basically we measure the peak to valley of the scratch.
Okay.
And it's you usually measure like 5 millimeter, a 5 millimeter length. So the probe is traveling 5 millimeter. You get the profile of the scratches, and then you take the average from peak to valley, and then you get RA.
Yep.
And the our set is the most interesting value to look at, because that measures peak to valley divided in 5 different zones, and you take the peak to valley, maximum peak to valley average of the 5 different zones, and then you get a value.
So in the world, and Leo, I know you do this, you're like me, you're out in the field at some of the yards, so the surveyors do this, they're basically measuring the consistency of the scratch profile when they use this piece of equipment and the depth.
Yeah.
So that's really so when we see these people with these pieces of equipment, they're looking at consistency, and because that will depend on, for me, again, I know I use this a lot being selfish from a paint manufacturer, because it's going to improve my DOI if I've got a good scratch profile.
Even gloss.
It can make a difference on gloss
absolutely.
Okay.
If you have the RZ profile is responsible of the many final result with the paint. That is depending from the level of the more RZ is regular, more is in the good value, and more in the final result. But you can see in the future if you like in the different applications.
So, quick question for those of us outside of where there are inspectors using these pieces of equipment. Is there a rough rule of thumb of if I use a non-graded paper? So if I picked up a 400 non-graded, and now all of a sudden I've gone, I can't use bad language. No. It's not necessarily the right scratch profile. On a non-graded, is there a safe bet do I finish with a different grade over the top to be safe, or?
Yeah. My recommendation would be
we have normally what we use if we know exactly, we compare internally with the difference with our, for instance, P400 with the non-P400, and we normally give information about which grit is better they use. For sure, if you spray metallic color, these two 400 don't give you the same result in the final quality.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish on that, because I think the way of finishing on that is that if we're with a P grade that is part of the standard, then when the manufacturer, us, say in our data sheets use P400, you're safe. If you're non-graded, my advice really is to speak to the experts, speak to the manufacturer about the paper, because to get the best result from the paint, you need the best preparation. I've said it before, you paint a rock, it looks like a rock. So on that note, I would like to thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And we will catch you on the next one.